What am I going to do? They just have a face-to-face meeting with me and then call me a nut?
Well, that's ridiculous. And you have all your own people around you who you know you can trust.
May I give you some advice?
Yes.
Never trust anybody. Not me, not anybody. They're not your mommy or your daddy. The only person you can trust is you.
Well, Grandma, what did you think of Rules Don't Apply, which is a film which is directed, produced, written, and at least partially starring Warren Beatty?
Yes.
Which I have to say, it's actually good to see him on the screen again. He's a rather appealing actor, given the opportunity.
Yes.
This film is set back in the 50s and 60s and concerns a couple of young people who come to Hollywood, a woman to become an actress and a man who hopes to develop real estate, which again in those days was a good time to develop real estate in Los Angeles.
Mulholland Drive, as he keeps talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get caught up in the orbit of Howard Hughes, and who is, at the beginning of the film, simply a recluse, and not a recluse, eccentric, let's put it that way. But by the end of the film, becomes a recluse and starts to get a little crazy, you might say. Now, we don't know a lot about Howard Hughes' life. I mean, we only know what we saw of him publicly. So much of this is...
And that he was a recluse. I knew that
but
much.
Again, much of this, since it is behind the scenes, is perhaps made up. Again, perhaps based on other people's accounts of him and such. But again, these two people get caught up in his life and how Howard Hughes' life changes, and they sort of are along while that occurs. So what did you think of the film?
It was fascinating. It was really, really interesting. The character that Warren Beatty presents as Howard Hughes is, in this particular vision of him, totally unpredictable. From one day to the next, from this day to whenever. I think most of the things about his extreme wealth and the power that it gave him that would give anyone, but his use of that power, his manipulation of people and events surrounding him was very clear. The two young people come with big wide eyes and their idealism and their ambition, what they are planning to do. They come from very conservative backgrounds, try to stay true to their upbringing, both of them somewhat religious. They're dealing with the influence that Howard Hughes has over their lives and their future, as they work their way through several years in Hollywood. I thought it was just fascinating. And the actors were all top-notch. Warren Beatty, of course, he was Howard Hughes, and his visual and his public persona, and in the recluse persona, when he decided he wasn't going out anymore. He was going to just keep himself in the dark, and everybody who comes to visit him in the dark. That was interesting. He was very, very good. And all of the other actors did a really good job.
I mean, they had a who's who of supporting actors.
Oh my, yes.
Matthew Broderick, Alec, Baldwin, Candice, Bergen. I mean, they're just all
these
through the
familiar
film.
faces kept appearing.
But again, they didn't appear as themselves or stick out. I mean, they were playing characters, and they did a very good job of playing the characters. The characters were written. They had a definite character to them, and they all did a very good job of playing them.
They were bit players to the main story.
Mm-hmm.
To those of us who are movie fans, they were very familiar faces. But you're right, they weren't playing themselves. They were playing this little bit part, as you would in Hollywood, where there are famous faces everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're in a restaurant or you're in somebody's office conducting business, answering the phone, doing whatever. I thought it was wonderful. What did you think?
Well, I have to say, Grandma, I agree with pretty much everything you said.
Yes, we're agreeing, yay.
I thought it was very interesting. It got more interesting, actually, as it went along.
Yes, it did.
What I found most interesting was, again, the way that Warren Beatty wrote the story and structured the story to, in many ways, sort of mirror Howard Hughes' own sort of descent into, if not insanity, at least...
very idiosyncratic.
Yeah,
So
again...
there was something going on there. And one of the characters in the story said your medications, are affecting you, making you act crazy.
But again, once again the young guy sort of really into the inner circle,
Mm-hmm.
Was the point where again Howard Hughes was getting worse and worse, and
Right.
One day they're in Nicaragua, the next day they're in London, the next day they're in Belgium. It's again his life had become at that point very erratic, and as you say again, you couldn't tell from one moment to the next what he was going to decide or what he wanted to do, and again, the way the film was, I think, mirrored that. Again, it was all sort of jumpy from one place to another, and again, the way people were talking, again, they sort of fell into his sort of pattern of the way he was acting and talking and such, and it was actually very interesting to see how he did that. Again, I just thought it was, again, for a period of time that we really have no record of, again, this sort of private time of Howard Hughes, these years where he kept out of the public eye
more and more.
Again, it was and we don't know how true it is, but again, for any sort of an example of what it could have been, this was as interesting an example as you could have created, and I thought it was just very interesting. Not perfect, but again, it was very interesting, and I would recommend anybody see it and see how this thing develops.
I definitely would. The rules don't apply is mentioned over and over again and becomes more and more significant and clear.
And there's the song in the...
And yes, and there is one of the main characters writes this song about how that it was an important influence in her decision making, and how much she appreciated that particular rule. It was very good, yes. 2 thumbs up. It was very interesting, and I recommend you go and see it.
Okay.
Yes.
I do too.
Yes.